talk loud because Mike's hearing aids are down. So we'll make sure everybody can hear me anyway. So, all right, Jeremiah 33:25. I believe I left that in your notes. This is Creation Series Part 7. We're going to talk about, there we go. Creation Series Part number 7, the laws of nature. Laws of nature. Creation Series Part number 7. Everybody good on? Yeah, I'm glad I got that on video. Actually, I don't think he gets over that far. Did you need a pen, bro? Make him work for it. It's good for him. It's good for him. All right. Part number 7. And we're going to talk about the laws of nature. There is a misnomer amongst people today that will tell you that if you are a Christian, then you deny the very laws of nature. And we're going to debunk that tonight. We had English class last week. We're going to have science class this week. All right. And I promise you, I learned from last week. I'm not going to give you a complete, in-depth, hardcore study. Some people this will never apply to. You'll never use this in witnessing, but there are some that will. And if it's something also, so I've given you everything you need, but some of it you may have to go study on your own. All right, and so we'll see if it's something that gets you excited about serving God. Then hey, I've got you all the notes that you need. Okay, Jeremiah chapter number 33 and verse number 25. Brother Mike Brown, will you go ahead and read verse 25 and 26 for me?
Thus saith the Lord, if my covenant be not with day and night, and if I have not appointed the ordinance of heaven and earth, then will I cast away the seed of Jacob, my servant, so that I will not take any of his seed to be rulers over the seed of Isaac and Jacob. For I will cause their captivity to return and have mercy on them.
Now, what's happening in this verse here is what the Lord's saying is that He has placed an order that is set on the earth, that the way things operate on the earth as far as the functionality of nature. And He will not allow that to be destroyed. He equated it here in His covenant with Israel, a covenant that He promised that He will not break. He said the earth would pass away before I ever break, or the natural order of the earth would break away. The ordinances of heaven and earth would go away before I would ever break the covenant with what I did with Abraham, the Abrahamic covenant and Israel. So there are laws of nature that are very real and a very true to the makeup, and are very true to the makeup of our universe. It's amazing. It's amazing to me as you'll look tonight, Brother Michael spoke, how real science backs up the Bible. Real science backs up the Bible. Last week, like I said, we had an English lesson. This week, we're going to talk about science a little bit. But the most fundamental laws of nature exist because God wills them to. They are a logical and orderly way for God to uphold and sustain the universe. I've told you before, I am not against science. I love science. I think science is great, properly used. The man science, I have no use for. The ones that theories, I don't really care a whole lot for. Whenever they start talking about, well, I've got a theory on that or a theory on this. That's great. That's great. You can have all the theories you want, but never claim them to be fact if it is still just a theory. All right. And so that's just as we get into this, something to have your mind set on. First, in your notes, the atheist is unable to account for the logical, orderly state of the universe. The atheist should be your first blank. The atheist is unable to account for the logical, orderly state of the universe. Now, why should the universe obey natural laws if there is no lawgiver? If there is no lawgiver, then there's no law to be had. If everything just happens, who tells the tide how far it can go? Who tells the sun when to rise and when to set? If it just happens, there's no law to uphold that. So there must be a lawgiver. The laws of nature are perfectly consistent with biblical creation. Consistent with biblical creation. I want to talk first this evening. Let me mute this real quick. Oh, it's over there. I'll have to do it this way. Sorry about that. I thought I muted all of these. All right, there we go. First thing I want to talk about is the law of life. Everybody see that there in your notes? The law of life? The law of life is called biogenesis. Biogenesis, just like it sounds. The word bio, then Genesis. This is a very well-known law of life that no man can deny. This cannot be denied. Biogenesis is something that has been proven over and over and over and has never been disproven. What is that, Pastor? Life comes from life. That's it. This is what observational science tells us, that organisms reproduce other organisms after their own kinds. You got a blank there. That's Genesis 1:21 in that first blank. Bible says in Genesis 1:21, and God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Your next blank is Genesis 1:25. Genesis 1:25 says, and God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and God saw that it was good. There was a man by the name of Louis Pasteur. I'll spell that for you. Louis. Last name is Pasteur, Pasteur. Pasteur. He disproved one point of spontaneous generation. He showed that life comes from life. You can look up his research. You can look up his study. In 1859, he did this study, and no one has ever proved existence of spontaneous generation. Ever. Now, I'm no scientist, but I can say that they never will either. Right? I can say they never will. Listen, if life does not spontaneously generate, if you look at this Louis Pasteur, I don't know exactly how you say it. I'm butchering his name, but he don't mind. He's dead. He doesn't care. So he did this study about, he took it's kind of like a broth. He took a broth, and he put one in a beaker that he boiled without a lid on it, without a top on it, and it boiled out. It kept getting infections in there, kept getting other kind of molecules in there. He did one with a gooseneck, is what they call it, and a gooseneck, and it burned out, and it stayed clean. It stayed pure. Nothing ever infected it. Why? Because there was no other organisms able to grow in that atmosphere. Nothing could produce life out of nothing. It's never been proven that it has. There's a theory that has happened, but never have you ever found spontaneous generation to where it has been observable. The only observable evidence is against spontaneous generation. So it was created, and now life brings forth life. Going from molecules to man, in your notes, going from molecules to man violates the very law of biogenesis. Going from molecules to man. All right, Brother Ken Hovind, he keeps a can of Campbell's soup in his office, because he says, my great grandfather, if you listen to them, was just a cup of soup. and then he, evolved into what we have today. There's so much, there's such an intricate design to the human body. It's unbelievable. So, evolutionists will have you believe that at least once this happened. At least once you got life from nothing. Life came from a non-living chemical according to them. But that is inconsistent with science and the law of biogenesis. All right? The laws of chemistry. Let's have a chemistry class. No, thank you, right? I'm not interested in a chemistry class. All right, I'm just going to give you a couple little things. But the laws of chemistry, life requires a certain chemistry. Your body requires that. Our bodies are powered by chemical reactions and depend on the laws of chemistry to operate, in order for them to operate in a uniform fashion. Every living being has information stored on a long molecule called, anybody? DNA. Brother Mike McPhail, that's spelled D-N. I just wanted to help him there. So it's stored on a long molecule called DNA. If the law of chemistry were different, then life as we know it would not be possible. God created the laws of chemistry just right so that life would be possible. Think about a book. I meant to bring a small children's book in here tonight. But it's all right. I don't need one to just illustrate my point. If I were to hold out a book, Ava, can I borrow that? I want to color a picture. Can I borrow it? No, I'm just picking. I just want to borrow it. Oh, there. Hey, look here. You go ahead. You keep taking notes, honey. I'm sorry. All right. Here is a book. Everybody see it? It's a good little book. God, you are. Got little pictures in here. Brother Peter, you could read this one. He had to get his glasses. So there's all kinds, God, you are my rock. You are this thing. Let me ask you a question. If we wait billions of years, y'all think this book could ever just fall out of the sky and just happen? Could that happen? No, you don't think so? There was a writer named William Osborne. I don't know nothing about him, but that's who wrote this book. There are 48 pages to this book. Just 48 pages. Y'all don't think that could happen over a billion years? That couldn't happen over a billion years? So look, this stuff doesn't just happen. This didn't just happen. Yet there are some intelligent people in the world that believe that what would be the longest book ever written just happened. Talking about DNA. If a 50 or 48 page children's book couldn't just, and there's some good illustrations in there, but how could that just fall out of the sky and be created, and happen one day? Not created, just happen one day. None of us are buying that, are we? See, atheists won't even buy that because they know that's impossible. People who are against creation won't even buy that because they know that's impossible. Let me give you a little information. Thank you so much for the book. Brother Peter, we'll make sure you get your hands on that later. If a strand of DNA was written out, it would make a book that was approximately 2,329,000 pages long. All you avid readers, how many books you got in your library that have over 2 million pages? Anybody? JB, you ain't even seen 2 million pages. Probably won't in your lifetime, right? But they think that was written perfectly to create what you see here today. That it just happened. It just happened, and the universe just put everything together. But yet we can't have enough faith that the universe can put together a 48-page children's book. But Brother Tom, it can be put together to where your eyes see like they do, your hair grows like it does, your ears hear like they do, your shape of your body is the way that it is. Your whole makeup just happens. I've got a theory about that. See, there was, in the beginning, God. Jack came up to me today. He told me, say, Pastor. I said, Jay, I'm going to tell you something. I said, what is it? He said, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Genesis 1:1. I said, that's my man right there. You keep doing that, buddy. I'm proud of you. So proud of you. Right? In the beginning, God. Not in the beginning, soup. Right? God created. Not really sure how anyone could think that things like that just happen. How non-life created the most intricate structures that we see on the earth today. Not sure how that happens, but we'll move on past chemistry. The laws of planetary motion. Now this one here is fun. The laws of planetary motion. Johannes Kepler, who was a creation scientist, discovered that the planets in our solar system obey 3 laws of nature. There are 3 laws of nature. Johannes Kepler discovered this. Johannes Kepler did not create this. He discovered this. We'll get into that later. Number 1, he found that planets orbit in what are called ellipses. E-L-L-I-P-S-E-S. E-L-L-I-P-S-E-S. He found they orbit in ellipses which are not perfect circles, as was previously thought to be true before his findings. With the sun being one focus of the ellipse, he found that given any given planet, as it got closer to the sun, it would speed up. It would speed up as it got closer to the sun. And that's the next one. But you go ahead and write it down. With the sun being the focus, though, a given planet is sometimes closer to the sun than it is at other times. If it was a perfect circle and the sun was the focus point, then we'd always stay the same distance away from the sun, right? Johannes Kepler found that we are in what is called ellipses, more of an oval. The rotation is more of an oval the way we go around the sun. And so, with that being said, we are closer to the earth is closer to the sun at certain times. Planets sweep out equal areas, number 2, in equal time. This means that planets speed up, is the where I kind of jumped ahead of myself. They speed up as they get closer to the sun within their orbit. Number 3, you don't have anything to write here. He found that the exact mathematical relationship between a planet's distance from the sun is measured in what they call AU, which is astronomical units. So the distance between the planet from the sun and its orbital period is measured in years. Okay, I'll put that one down there just so you didn't have to write anything. You can just concentrate on reading that. Planets that are farther away from the sun take longer to orbit than that of planets that are closer to the sun. Has that not been proven? Right? You learn that in just a basic science class, okay? So, the laws of planetary motion, we see that. All this is going to come full circle here in a minute. The laws of physics. The laws of physics. Physics describes the behavior of the universe at its most fundamental level. Physics contain laws that our universe holds to. E equals mc squared, right? Which is energy equal to mass multiplied by the speed of light squared, right? We all knew that, right? We got that on t-shirts at the house, I'm sure. There are other kind of simple formulas within physics that our universe holds to. Like I said, I'm not going to go into a lot of depth with all of these or most of these, but I do want you to kind of just have an idea as to what they are. Universal constants is the next one. I believe I have that in your notes. There are many constants in nature that this is a parameter within the laws of physics which set the strengths of fundamental forces, foundational fundamental forces such as gravity, and the masses of fundamental particles such as electrons. God has set the constants because they are essential for life. Could you imagine if we didn't have gravity? Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah. Boy, I could dunk. I could dunk a basketball. Yeah. JB might actually be able to dunk a basketball one day. Oh, sorry, son. Sorry. But the fundamental, there are universal constants that have to be in place, and they will not move. They will not waver, Brother Matt, because God set them in place from the very beginning. Nobody created these. Nobody come up with these, maybe names and studies and stuff, but they have always been in place. Next, you'll see the anthropic principle. The anthropic principle. This is just a law of physics that is fine-tuned by God, that without it, life is not possible. All right? Then the laws of mathematics. The laws of mathematics are known as transcendent truth. This is truths that are not defined by the world, but rather they define the world. I think of a lady who I saw one time that said 2 plus 2 is 5. And she said, because 2 plus 2 equals 4 is racist. Anybody else see that video? I thought I have heard it all. I have heard it all. Trying to change mathematical equations by just saying it's not so does not change a thing. You can change what you want in the world, but that does not change the truth in how that operates the world. Mathematics was not invented by man, but rather it was discovered by man. The same way as Kepler didn't create a way, as we talked about earlier, of the planets to orbit. He just discovered that they orbit in that way. So all these things, whether it was ever discovered or not, just because Kepler discovered it, just because he discovered that there was more of an oval orbit than a circular orbit, just because he discovered it doesn't mean that, Brother Danny, prior to his discovery, that it was doing anything different. It was set from the very foundation of the earth, that God, in the world rather, that God put them where they need to be operating in the order in which they are operating in. So nothing changes that. They had been set up to orbit that way and had been for thousands of years before his discovery. Now, the laws of logic. The laws of logic. All the laws that we have talked about today, from the laws of chemistry to physics to biogenesis, depend on laws of logic. These are like mathematics. They are transcendent truths, okay? That means there are truths that are not defined by the world, but they are rather truths that define the world. The law of, in your notes, contradiction is a law of logic. I believe I've actually covered the law of contradiction before in one of these classes. Basically what that's saying is you cannot have both A and not A in the same time in the same relationship. It just does not. That's a contradiction. And it does not work. You can't say, oh, well, I've got A in this equation, but also in this equation, I got not A. Well, it don't make sense. You can't have them both, right? It does not. It's a contradiction in your formula. Without the laws of logic, reasoning would be impossible. Sometimes I think that reasoning might be going out the window today. Sometimes I feel like whenever you look at our world, it just seems like reasoning has just set sail and I don't know what's going to happen to it. But understand this. Without the law of logic, reasoning would be impossible. The atheist cannot account for the laws of logic as seen, though they must accept that they exist in order to have rational thinking. See, they'll tell you, think rationally. Well, great. Let's do that. Let's think rationally. And we can do all those things. But you cannot account for the laws of logic as seen in the earth and seen in our world and not know that it was a creation. Numbers 23:19 will be your next blank. Numbers 23:19. But Reggie, you got it there?
Yeah.
With your little cheater phone? Atta boy. I'm just picking at him. He's got his hands full over there. Go ahead, buddy.
God is not a man that he should lie, neither the Son of Man he should repent. Hath he said, and shall he not do it? Or hath he spoken, and shall he not make it good?
We find the law of contradiction there in your notes here in this verse. The fact that he cannot lie is a reflection of his character. It's a reflection of his character. So we find that he cannot lie. That would be a contradiction should he be able to. This is the law of contradiction. That means that his character will not allow him to lie. So you can see the law of contradiction in action right here. James 1:13, we find in James 1:13, Bible says, let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. There in your notes, God will not tempt a man with evil. He will not tempt him with evil. These things would contradict his perfect nature. His perfect nature. Since we have been created in God's image, we possess the ability, listen to me when I say this, we possess the ability to reason logically as we instinctively know the laws of logic. It's kind of an instinct. We understand those things. We know them. Though, due to our finite minds, we sin. And we don't always think logically. We are created in God's image, so we have the ability. We have the knowledge to do, and Brother Tom, we have sometimes the want to think logically. Right? However, due to our little minds, how finite they really are, and then sin, let's just be honest, call it is what it is, right? And sin, it hinders our ability to always think in such a way. God will not tempt a man. God will not do anything to contradict His word. God will not do anything to contradict His commands. And God would not use things in this world. God will not use things in this world that are not of Him. I understand what I'm saying? When you're talking about creation, now, you'll hear people say, oh, well, God's used this, God's used that. Hey, listen, whatever God's been able to use in your life to get you to turn around and come to Christ, hey, God don't have to answer to me. But what I'm saying is, if it's written in His Word, He will not contradict it. And so He will not tempt a man because it does mess up and goes against His perfect nature. Now, let's look at the uniformity of nature. The uniformity of nature. The laws of nature are uniform. They do not change arbitrarily, and they apply throughout the whole universe. The laws of nature apply as much in the future as they have in the past. This is one of the most basic assumptions in science, that nature don't change. Understand, nature does not change because we want it to. Boy, aren't we living in a society that thinks that they can change science by just wanting it? By just, well, I just don't feel like that today. Well, I don't feel 45. I feel 70. I saw a guy one time, and this is just, it's so funny. He said, he's on there as a young black fella. He's about 25, 26. He's a young black guy. He said, crying. He said, man, I went down to the bank. I told him I was a 40-year-old lawyer with white lawyer with an 800 credit score, trying to get a loan, and they run me out of there. They said, no, you're not, you're a black man. You can't have it. He said, but I identify as a 40-year-old ex-lawyer. And I was just like, you know what? That's hilarious to me. That's hilarious. We're in a time and day. I know some of you got it all uptight right there. The race. We're talking about race. My goodness, y'all. Race has always been something to laugh about. Race always be something to be laughed about. There ain't but one race. It's the human race. I don't care what color you are. I don't care. I want to see you in heaven. Amen. And so that doesn't bother me. That doesn't bother me none. All right, so we've gotten too uptight about that stuff. But anyway, it's just, why don't it work for him? Why don't it work for me? Why can't I get retirement? Brother Tom, I want retirement. You want retirement. You worked all these years to earn it, right? We want those things, but we can't get them because I guess we got to keep charging cards up for illegals. Anyway, let's move on. That wasn't a political message. I'll make it one if you want to. No, I'm just kidding. Uniformity of nature. Listen, laws of nature apply as much in the future as they have in the past. Nothing changes those. All right, so keep that in mind. This whole crowd saying, follow the science, follow the science. We heard that in years past. Follow the science, but yet they cannot follow the science themselves. The secular scientists cannot follow this law, but we as Christians can. Brother Mike, because we as Christians look and say, all right, the uniformity of nature. God set everything in order. Why do I have to try to find some? And listen, they've tried over years. Brother Steve, they have tried over years to debunk creation. And they haven't. That's why it's still the theory of evolution. Because they cannot. There's no way that they can. So, there we are, the uniformity of nature. Jeremiah 33:25. We've been there once. Let's go there again. There in your notes. Jeremiah 33:25 as we get ready to close her up tonight. Oh. Jeremiah 30. Brother Matt, you got it there? Oh, I thought you had it there. Oh, you got it. 33:25? Yep, 33:25. Nope, just that one. God is Lord over all creation. Will we agree with that? He also sustains the universe in a consistent and logical way, according to the laws that we've looked at tonight. The laws of nature depend on other laws of nature, which ultimately depend on God's will. Remember we talked about how the laws of mathematics depend on the laws of physics, which depends on these different laws of chemistry and things of that nature. God created the laws of physics, there in your notes, in just the right way, so that the laws of chemistry would be correct, so that life can exist. Now, we're not going to get into it this evening, but come here fairly soon, we're going to cover some things about, there's that question as we talked about who did Cain marry? Of course, he married his sister. It's pretty easy to explain that, seeing as how incest was not a thing up till Leviticus 18, right? Up until that point, there weren't enough mutations inside the body to cause any deformities within the human. Now, today, our children that are in the room, our children have at least 50 to 100 more mutations than we do. That's why Gabby's got that wandering eye. Just kidding. She's sitting back there too comfortable. I couldn't let her do that. Yeah, you see it? You can't ever. There you go. That's because we raised her underneath the high power line. So we'll see more about that as we get forward. All right. So that was for the purpose of populating the earth, right? That was necessary. And so after Leviticus 18, that's where those folks out in Utah, they got it wrong. The polygamous, buddy. That all, you got to have more than one wife, and then you can have your sister and have your cousin and have I'm not into all that stuff, right? So all that stuff is back to the Bible, and that ended in Leviticus 18, which we'll get to at another time. It is doubtful with the physics, with the chemistry, with the all the laws of order that we looked at tonight, the laws of nature. It's doubtful that any human would ever have been able to solve such a complex puzzle. The atheists cannot account. They cannot account for the laws of nature, even though they must agree that they exist. You can't get around it. You cannot get around that they exist. These laws we've talked about, the biogenesis, you cannot get around biogenesis. It exists. It is proven that life comes from life. Never has it ever been proven that life comes from anything but life. These laws are inconsistent with naturalism, yet they are perfectly consistent with the Bible. They are inconsistent with naturalism, perfectly consistent with the Bible. God is a God of perfect order, right? We know that Scripture tells us that God is a God of order. So when we look at the universe, I'm not talking about the earth and the way people act on it. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about how it's set up. What is it? One full trip around the sun is 1 year. Is that right? We spend one full time, and that's a day, right? Nothing messes that up. That is set in stone. That is God. We are just far enough from the sun that we don't burn up, but we're close enough to the sun that we don't freeze to death. That stuff don't just happen, y'all. I mean, and I know I'm preaching to the choir tonight, but I'm just saying, those are things that it just, you have to have some kind of weird teachings in order to believe that. I don't understand how that even makes sense in somebody's mind to think that, oh, this just all happened one day. When you look at the intricacy of the eyeball we've talked about before, when you look at how the human body is created and what all goes into that and how that all happens and how that baby grows, baby from the time conception is a baby, and how that baby grows, develops eyelids, fingers. Why don't our ears start growing in the middle of our head? Right? Now, I understand there are some birth defects. It happens. It happens. Is that because of the mutations? I don't know. Is that just because of happening? I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not, that's not I'm a pastor. All right. But I do know this. There are far more that are created in the womb that are born right than there are that are born with defects, if you want to call them that. All right? If it just happened, fell out of the sky. Have y'all ever thought about that? Could y'all imagine? Can I just take just a minute and have a little liberty here? I appreciate it. Could you imagine being that first fish that decided it was going to come out of water and live on land and grow lungs? Can you imagine being that first one? No, nobody wants to be that first one. It's dead. You know what happened to the second one that tried it? It died. Why are we not seeing fish getting up on the shore down here? Brother Peter, you ever brought a fish aboard and it's breathing? You have? Oxygen? For a minute. It's not getting oxygen out of the water no more, right? They're not. I don't care. You can bring a fish up in a trap every day for the next 30 years. It will never develop lungs to breathe on land. It'll never develop legs to walk on land. It won't. Why? Because it's never happened in the first place. Okay? It's never happened in the first place. There has never been life outside of life. Listen, I like to think of myself as a logical person. Right? I think we can be logical as Christians. I believe we really can. I'll give an ear. But if it contradicts the Bible, I'm going to tell you that contradicts what I believe because that's what God said. Right? We expect the universe to be organized and in a logical, orderly fashion and to obey uniform laws. Why? Because the universe was created by the power of God. God is all powerful, right? Yeah. There's nothing that can thwart His power. His power is constant. His power is definite. There's nothing that can take that away. All right? And if that's the case, if we believe that God created, if we believe that God created and that He used evolution to do so, or that this happened and God just spoke this in existence, but everything else over billions of years, Brother Mike, just kind of happened, we are negating His power, saying He couldn't do it. When His Bible plainly says, Brother Matt, that He did. Jack said it at the very beginning of the night. He come up to me and he told me, in the beginning, what, Jack? God created the heaven and the earth. Right, I'm embarrassing him. That's why I'll give you a hug later, buddy. But we have to understand that. And that is something. Science, I love science. I told y'all that before. I love science. Not everybody loves science. When you start talking about stuff, science like this, that's fun. This is fun to me. All right, to be able to look at it and be able to get all that stuff in. So, all right, that wraps it up. If you got any